Before I get into today's class, I want to remind a number of you, go to onex.com. These are some of the photos that you'll see at onex.com. They are superb in almost any way you want to use it as a way of looking at things. They just are so good. So think about going there, onex.com. Beautiful, beautiful images. Today, I want to show you basics of Adobe Camera Raw, and I will then play a Blake Rudis video, which I think covers them really well also. But first, I want to show you by taking two images into Adobe Camera Raw. That's three. Take two images into Adobe Camera Raw. One is vertical and one is horizontal. And the reason I'm doing that is when you get into Adobe Camera Raw, the preference, come on screen. If you haven't set it up, it will come in this way with the images that you've brought in from Bridge in the bottom, and they will be across the bottom. I prefer to see them on the left-hand side, and it's very easy to change that. You just right-click and click on vertical, and it puts them up on the left-hand side. I prefer that because then I see the horizontal, I see the vertical easier that way. So that's one thing that I do just to see whatever images I'm doing. Now, I want to do one image at a time, so I'll cancel this and come back to just this one image and take it into Adobe Camera Raw. And over on the right-hand side are a number of features, tools, and tool sets, I will call them. Before I get into each of these, at the top, you can see edit, and you could click auto, and it will change your image. You might like how that looks. I didn't think that it did a whole lot of what I want to do, but it does some things for you might take a look at it. It also has black and white, but I don't think it's a good black and white. I don't think that does very well. They will improve, I'm sure. Then under that, it says profile. And if you click on the little down arrow, you can do monochrome or browse. And if you browse, here are the number of ways that this image can be changed automatically for you. So if you look at the basics, which is what we just talked about, color or monochrome, in this way, if you look at it this way, you just put the cursor over whichever one you want to see, and you see the effect of it. But then there are artistic, and artistic are presets that can change the color and the various presentation of your image just by looking at putting the cursor over it. Then you could click on it and it will change your image. So that's one. There's black and white. Now you can look at various ways that the black and white really will show up better. And you could click on one and then get back into the regular tools for Adobe Camera Raw. Modern, different ways. And one of the things I think is important when you're looking at a preset, for me, my influence on me by Ansel Adams is that the shadow area should have detail here. So in this one, it's a little dark, but I could bring that out once we get back into the basic tab. And then I look at this one, see how that looks. The sky is looking a little better here. But in any case, you have all of these little presets that you could click on any one of them. That's under modern. Now they have vintage. Vintage, not a whole lot different from the modern, except in this one certainly is. And I'm sure that they will change, they being Adobe, will change these periodically over the next few months to a year. But those are all presets that you can work on. You say, okay, how do I get back to where I want to see all the other tools? Up at the top, at the left, says go back. click that, you're back here. So if you used one of these profiles, go to here and we'll do this one and go back. You notice that at the top it says vintage 10. So that change is there, but I have all these tools I go through. And a basic tool has most of the features that I use. I'll go through that in a minute. But I want to show you something else. Up at the top and up top, the little gear icon. If you click that, it comes up with all the settings and under panels, the second rectangle here, I have it set as single, which is the default. If you have multiples, I'll explain that, but having single, which I have, but you could change that, means that when I have one of these tool sets open, it is only that tool set that's open. And if I go to another one, it closes that one and opens it. So it doesn't have multiple panels open at the same time. And I just happen to like that because of the size of my monitor, so that if I'm working in detail, it shows me all the features for detail. When I click back on basic, it closes detail. You see down here in the bottom, it closes it. And all those sliders are there. Over on the right-hand side, let me come on down to curve. I go there, back. You say, oh, I would like to have all of these set. If you go back up to the top, on the right-hand side, that vertical set, and just click that, that always brings you back to these basic tools. I call them basic, even though the first one was basic. These are all the tools that are now available within Adobe Camera Raw. And a lot of these were in Lightroom and now have been brought into Adobe Camera Raw. But over here on the right-hand side, in the vertical bar, the bottom part, more image settings. And you could click through these things to save the image or things like that. But that isn't as important as this first one, which gives you many more presets. Here's portraits or deep skin, and you can run through these. The same thing as you put your cursor over them, it shows you the effect of them. Portraits, medium skin, style, cinematic. All those things are there, hidden under that little double circle there. Style, vintage. Color, natural color, bright, high contrast detail, vivid. And I think that most of this was added because not a lot of the users of Adobe Camera Raw were using the individual sliders in all of those tool sets up front that I showed you. So you can come in here and just click along here and see which one you like. So creative, black and white. And actually, I think Nick Silver Effects Pro 2 still does the best job on black and white, but they're getting here. Portraits. This was a portrait, to be a different way of seeing that, medium and deep skin, so on, all those aspects of that. We will cover the curve and some of the other things later, but here's sharpening. And in sharpening, if you go back to all the presets, come up here to click at the top right and brings me back to these. Down in detail, it has a sharpening slider. And I think that one does a much better job than the presets at this point. But there are all these other presets and things that you can do, and the vignetting. And I prefer to do the vignetting, not so much here, although it does its job, is I prefer to back up to the top right, click that to get back here, come down to effects, and that's vignetting. And if you haven't used this, when you first come in, it will look this way. And the little arrow to the right, you click that, you get all the other sliders. So I prefer using this one because it gives me more control. I can darken that, feather it more, do more roundness in the image. So I have many more ways of doing the vignette that I prefer versus the preset. Also, you can close this by clicking on the arrow again next to the word, so it closes it, has all of them here again. If I was in the basic features and I want to close that, just click the arrow again. So we'll come back over here. So all of those are presets and ways of doing things, including vignetting, sharpening, so on. Next thing, which I haven't used, is that it takes the red out of the eye. If you have a portrait and there's red eye, you can take it out. And I've seen it work, and it works really well. So you would then just adjust it based on the size of the eye and click on it, and it will just eliminate the red in the eye. It's amazing. The other one here is the radial filter, meaning you click on that and you come over into the image. I'm going to start at the top, hold my left key down. Oh, no, this is radial. Sorry about that. Here's the radial filter, and I can adjust the size of it and move it around. I can make it more this way. And what it will do is anywhere I place it is where you can do any of these adjustments on the right, and it will be on the outside of the image, but you can flip that, invert. Now, when I'm making the changes are inside the oval. So you can do the oval, but again, many of these features are the same as what I have in the Photoshop workspace, and I prefer to use dodge, burn, and saturate tools rather than an oval where it's merging things in, but not as much as how I would want to smooth into the rest of the image. But that's what that is. The next one, which is a graduated filter, that at one point was at the top in the left-hand side of the features in Adobe Camera Raw. But if you start at the top, and you can come on down to as far as you want. So if you want to just adjust the upper part, now all the sliders on the right-hand side adjust there. But it starts from the top. The most intensity is at the top, and less and less and less and less as you're coming down to this point. And you can change how much effect you have for that. So if you want to bring it all the way down or up, texture, all the same sliders you have in the basic tool set are here, but you're doing it only in that portion. And also have multiples. So I could have one from the bottom and one from the top and create an aspect of darkness in the bottom and let it merge into the image. I think that works
John,
really well. Yes.
I see a mask because when you were doing this graduated filter, I liked what it was doing to the sky, but when it came down, you could see half of the building was darkened. Could you mask that out as you're applying
Yes, you
this?
can. Yes, you can. And so you can play with those things also. There's an eraser. Yes, a lot of features. And I'm going to play a video for you shortly, and you'll see more of these, but I want to run through these aspects for you to show you what they are. And if you don't want one of these, you click on this delete it. Hit the delete key. Next is the adjustment brush. And if you have a Wacom tablet, it's then does its work based on how hard you press in with the pen on the Wacom tablet. But you can see that I'm doing things here. Wherever I've done that, I can adjust just in the area where I've painted. Again, I like the sponge tool in Photoshop Workspace. And the same with this one, which is the spot healing brush. You can come in and remove some things, but if you click it there, then you grab it where you want it to pick it up and put it in there. That's how that works. I, again, prefer cloning, but these tools are here. I just wanted to show you the tools. Then, of course, cropping, and we'll go back to all these tabs. In here, the geometry is if you had a wide angle lens and it was changing the structure, you see the little arrow here to the right. If you click that, you can change it vertically and change things around to straighten things. Be careful of how you do it because it will leave blank space around things. When I do this mostly, I do it in the Photoshop Workspace and use the transform, distort, warp, all those features in there. And then I can control how the other parts of the image will be brought in. So, but if you want to use this, it's here for you to use. Most of my work on an image is done in the basic tab, the curve, and the video will show you even more on the curve. On the curve now, I'm not one to go in and place a dot here and then move the curve around. I don't do that. If you click on the first, right near it says adjust, you click that first part, you get these shadows, details, or darks, lights, highlights. So I can adjust the deepest shadows just by moving a slider, and it moves the curve automatically. And I would do the darks, highlights, lights. What's nice about this is compared to the basic tab where you have highlights and shadows, by using the curve, you're getting more of a separation between the darks and the very dark shadows. So, and even the lights and the highlights. So more separation of sliders that you can use to do that. In the video, you'll see the next parts here, which is if you click on this, you can then edit by clicking on the curve and changing it in various ways. And if you want to change only a specific color, then you can click on one of these colors, red, green, or blue. And depending on where you click on the curve and come down, depends on how you change the color within that range of pixels. Most of the work I do is come back here and I use it to do this, and I'll go back to the basic tab to control vibrance, saturation, and then into Photoshop and use the dodge, burn, and sponge tools there. Because I've used them for so long, I'm so accustomed, and I can then go specifically in an image where I want to do it rather than overall. So those are the features on the right-hand side in the vertical column. And I will go through more of these after we see the video. Cancel. He gets a little bit excited about things, doesn't he? Well, you can see all the features that are there in Adobe Camera Raw. So I want to show you the use of some of those. One of the things that I do a lot is take it into Adobe Camera Raw, or take it into, mostly this is my process, is to take it into Photoshop first. And then take it to Adobe Camera Raw because I want to come back into Photoshop. And there are many ways to do it. You go into Adobe Camera Raw from Bridge and then open it in Photoshop. You can do all those things. But I often do it this way because I'm doing other things here. And so I take it from Photoshop, and it's working, takes it back into, see the bridge? See bridge?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Take it to Adobe Camera Raw from here. See Adobe Camera Raw?
Yes.
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 My favorite, and this was the main element of there before, is this basic tab. And there are some sliders here that I do instantly. One is for an image like this, I would want to use clarity. Now, here's what clarity does. It makes it look a little sharper, but what it really is doing is darkening the mid-tone pixels. So a little bit of the area here in the dark area gets darker. But I can add texture, and texture will add to the buildings. Now, of course, if you take these in the opposite direction, you can do some interesting things. But clarity and texture have become almost 99% of the time that I'm in doing something here. I've explained this before. Vibrance are the muted colors. So when I move that to the right, the muted colors are brought out. Saturation brings up all the colors at the same time. Doesn't matter whether it's a muted color or not. So it brings that up. I don't use contrast as much here, but you can. And if you do that, I'm always sensitive to the shadow areas. In this case, I would want to bring up those shadows some. And then that goes back to what I was saying before, that the basic tab, if I'm going to do that, I would come down to the curves and click on the parametric one so that I can adjust the shadows a little differently than just a single slider for shadows. I can get the really dark areas and the shadow areas in the dark. So I'm getting some of that detail in there that I want up in these trees and things. Go back to the basic. You might want to bring the highlights down just a little bit. Detail. Close these off so that if you've not used this yet, this is how it would appear when you open it, and you'd see sharpening, noise, and color noise reduction. But you want to click these little arrows because they give you more of the sliders. So if I sharpen this image, look at watch the detail down in this lower right area, how much more detail and sharpness I get from that. That is really very good. And you can change the radius of the pixels. 1 to 2 pixels is all you really want to do, maybe 1.5 or something. And detail. And in this, you really just want to play with it and see how much detail do you want to bring out related to it. Sharpening here has really improved. I am impressed with this. And noise reduction. It has really handled a lot of the noise within an image by doing this. And to do that, you should just zoom in on your image. This is a very small JPEG, so you see as I zoom in, it's not that sharp. It's very small. I'm just using it for demonstration. But noise reduction really works really well. And look at the sharpness in this area here as I move that up and back. It really does a great job in noise reduction.
John,
Yes,
have you had a chance to compare the noise reduction in this new Camera Raw as opposed to Topaz?
I have not. I am very impressed with what Topaz can do. I'm going to guess, Joe, that Topaz still has a little bit advantage, but here it is. You can do all this in one place.
Yeah, that's
But-
wonderful.
Yeah, that's really an advantage. And I've been impressed that so much so, Joel, that I haven't gone to Adobe Topaz to adjust anything. I've done it here and it's done what I've needed it to do.
That saves a lot of work.
It sure does.
Yeah.
So that's the detail slider.
John, in this case, you didn't dehaze at all. You are normally very keen on using the dehaze slider.
I am when there's a sky, and I'll come back to that
Aha.
yeah. If I don't have a sky, just go up there for you. Yeah, good one. I usually am doing right down to the dehaze slider face. So if I do the dehaze slider on this type of image, you can see that it's not doing a lot because there isn't a lot of haze here. The haze usually is in the sky area of an image, and that's where I would use the dehaze slider. And down to effects, I talked about vignetting. Again, if you come in here and you haven't used it, click that little arrow there, that brings it out. If you move it to the right, it brings in white vignetting. To the left gives you the dark vignetting, and then I feather. And I think this is really a good way to do it. This is in one of my books. I think it's in volume 8. Just to show you an aspect of what I ran into one time. And I have a scene like this and I want it to, it's a spring, it's the spring of the year. I want it to be the autumn of the year. So I can take the hue saturation, move that to the left, move the saturation to the right, come down to the blue, move it to the left. And now I am changing all the colors of the trees to an autumn color. So I have a very different look to the image based on using the calibration sliders. The other thing he mentioned was you have these little eyeballs here that if you go back to that and it gives you the settings that you had so when you've done things, it saves those settings for you. Let's use this one related to the sky. Anytime I have a sky image, first thing I do is go to basic. Remember, there are all these other features over here, all these presets under color profile and all those other things that you can do to look through your image. So just play and play and play and play. But not to do this, we're going to stay with this, go to the dehaze slider. And if you watch the sky, as I change this, it brings more detail into the sky. It darkens the blue. Oh, you see, I have some dirt on my center there. The more that you move that way, if you come the other way on this, you see it taking just blows it out. But skies, just look at the detail in the clouds up in this area here. Just beautiful, beautiful work that way. What I've had to do in the past, that I see that they've improved it some here, is when I've moved the dehaze slider, the blue actually changed to a blue that I really did not like. And I would come down to the color mixer, and as he explained, you could do the various colors. You have it on color. If you have it on HSL, you could come the same thing as we've done before, which is click on the targeted adjustment tool, come up, click in the blue area, and move it to the left to saturate it, move it to the right to, left to desaturate it, right to saturate it. And if you wanted to actually change the hue, that's what I was doing. Actually click on hue. If I click on luminance and come up into that, go to the left, it darkens it, go to the right, it lightens it, go to saturation, right saturates, left desaturates. Hue actually changes the color of the sky for me. So you could have the whatever color I want. What he was explaining is when you click on the color, now you can click on that specific color and you have hue, saturation, and luminance all as sliders underneath it rather than back to this. In this case, you need to click on the hue, you need to click on the saturation, you need to click on the luminance, and then change those sliders. Here you get that control all together in one place, which is very nice. You see, as you move it, it may do something in the image, it may not. So you realize you'll spend hours now working on your images to do this stuff. Go back to the detail on this one. I'll sharpen. That's good. Noise reduction, color noise reduction. Zoom in here. Next time I'll have larger images and show you the subtleties of these sliders so that you see color noise reduction and what it does. I just wanted to demonstrate the overall aspects of these. And if you come up to the spot healing brush, I would like to remove that little, yeah, I like to do it in Photoshop Workspace, but here it's there, click that and say, okay, I want that to be matched by that one. Good. I'll get this one and I want it to be matched by that. So you show it what area you want to be taken into that area. Any questions on any of these? 'Cause I think,
Yes, John, I have a question. When
okay,
you were doing the sharpening in RAW, do you also then, when you're working in Photoshop, do you do sharpening again there? I
not
thought it was
usually.
kind of the last thing to do.
Yeah, I found that sharpening now in Adobe Camera Raw really is probably all you really will need. But if you take it into, let me take this into Photoshop. Can you see my Photoshop screen?
Not yet.
No?
Mm-mm.
Stop, share again. Now you see it?
Yes.
The sharpening features here are very good. Of course, you have the tool, which is sharpen tool. I will say that use that only when you want to do a very specific area, very small. And then you can sharpen just that area because it generates noise very quickly and you wouldn't want to try to sharpen the whole image that way. You can come up to filter, sharpen. And the one that I've used the most and found to be the most effective is the Smart Sharpen because it gives me sliders again. So I can do the amount of sharpening and the radius of the pixels that I want and how much noise reduction do I want done in there and remove the blend, the lens blur, Gaussian blur, immersion blur. It's usually lens blur that I'm dealing with here. So yes, this works, and maybe you want to do it again on top of what you've done in Adobe Camera Raw. It's just a matter of how bad the image is out of focus and how sharp you make it. But look at this. Let's look at the history of this. Watching the bottom portion, this area here.
Mhm.
See, it really did sharpen that up. Also, you want to do sharpening of some specific areas, you can always use a quick selection tool, or if I wanted to do the building, I might want to use this capability of making that selection and it will select just that building for me.
So I guess I'm really old fashioned. I thought sharpening was something to do with image size, and after you sized your image, then you sharpened?
Ah, good question. I was assuming I'm only using small images to demonstrate. I would not do all the things I've shown you today on a small image and then upsize it. I will I will take my raw file, size it to how I will want to make an output print, and then I do all these features on that. Does that answer your question?
So you would take it into Photoshop, size it, and then go to RAW?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, John.
And see here, I've selected the building. I could go into Adobe Camera Raw from here, use the sharpening capability. The wonder about all this is that you have multiple ways to do the same thing as they've had for other features. And you just need to play with them and see which one works the best for you. Any other questions? Hey, I'll leave it here. The next time I will bring in very high resolution images and we'll see the subtle changes in those. So we'll do that the next time.